This is the Oxford Brookes Alumni London Chapter Digital Webinar. My name is Nyan Amer, and I volunteer with the London chapter, focusing on business engagement for our members. And I'm pleased that we have the opportunity to sit down with our panel this evening and discuss a great topic, coming out of COVID and making ourselves more employable. Before we kick off, though, let me tell you just a little brief overview about the London chapter. We started late in the year in 2020. It was established and we launched the London chapter. This was based around the fact that we have over 13,000 Oxford Brookes graduates who live in London, and we want to look at catering to those alumni. The hope is to bring these past graduates and alumni together, both past and present, and then look to link to this community. And more importantly, we want to be useful to our members, which is part of the reason why we're hosting this webinar now. And I think it's quite apt for the times. As restrictions start to loosen up, we have to try and return to a normal, but what is normal? So great topic. And just before we start, a bit of housekeeping, if we can all stay on mute. And if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A function within Zoom, and I will try and get round to asking the panel the questions as and when they come in. So in our discussion, we hope to look at what has happened over the last year and the unprecedented events of the COVID pandemic and how it's impacted people's employment and careers. The hope is that we can shine a light on how we can all adapt and adjust to a very different employment landscape. Our panel have each got a unique perspective and offer insights on how to best navigate these new challenges. On our panel, we're joined by Leila Singh and Carla Cabrera, both Oxford Brookes graduates. Leila is a personal coach, brand coach and mentor, and founder of My Brand. Over the last 2 decades, she has been working in the tech sector with HP, and upon starting My Brand, Leila has focused her wealth of knowledge and experience to help coach business and career professionals to establish their competitive advantage, to be their best selves when looking at new opportunities. We are also joined by Carla, a director at Claire Joster International, one of the largest providers of HR services in Spain. Carla has over a decade of experience in executive recruitment and talent management, offering a great insight into what employers are looking for. Thank you both for joining us. So to start off, I would like to ask you both what might be an obvious question, but from your perspective, what have you noticed and seen over the last year on how COVID has impacted people and careers? Shall we start, Carla? What would you like to start with this one?
Sure, absolutely. So I will start with the good news, and it's that we expect a robust recovery in the economy by the second half of 2021 this year, which is great. But the bad news is that the latest projections indicate a persistent deficit of work in 2021 still for this year. So unemployment will remain high, and I could say on global basis. We have to realize that the impact on jobs has been 10 times bigger than it was during the global financial crisis. So it's a massive impact that we've had. To give you some data, around the spring 2020, last year, unemployment declined by 2.4%. And this year, the losses will remain at 4.6 approximately. So as you can see, it's still a considerable decrease in employment. So the people that were most affected that we've seen are young people and women, unfortunately. So I think those are the weakest collectives or population that we should be addressing in the future. And in terms of the sectors, we can discuss later on, but as a kind of general overview, that's what we've seen up until now.
Okay. And Leila, do you have do you have anything to add to that?
Only from my experience of the people that I know in my networks and my clients, is that there's a lot of people who are in the job market right now, and it's saturated in terms of it's really, there's so many. I'm sure Carla probably have figures to this, but so many hundreds of people is what I've heard applying for one job. So it is really quite challenging if you're finding yourself in that situation.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, and I suppose that's part of the reason why we're taking this time to have this conversation, to try and obviously give everyone or give our members the opportunity to put their best foot forward if they are in a position where they do find themselves having to look for a new job or a new role. So hopefully we can delve into that a little bit more. Carla, do you know of which industries have been most impacted from your experience over the last year? Is there any one that stands out? Obviously, we over here in the UK, we've heard about hospitality being hit very heavily. But are there is that true to form across the from your experience?
Yeah, I would say hospitality is the obvious one. But if we think on the overall situation worldwide, imagine supply chains that were completely disrupted because the world was literally not moving. So that has been really affected. Imagine the airlines and all the ecosystems around the airlines, because you have companies that cater them, or all the services, facilities, services that go with the airline industry have been obviously very hit. Oil and gas drilling has been as well very affected. Auto parts, automotive, equipment producers, manufacturers, and then any traditional sector that you can think of. Any company or industry that didn't have a digital business model and an alternative to continue to carry on with their services were tremendously hit.
Yeah, definitely. Very interesting. So as we look to try and put our best foot forward, if we do find ourselves in a position where we are, tentatively looking at the job market and this oversaturated job market, Leila, what are the best tips and tricks to bring success whilst looking for a job?
That's almost like asking how to bring. There's just so much that can be done. And as I said, I think at the moment, finding that you're almost like a needle in a haystack. If you're in the job market actively looking around, you want to be able to stand out. So you want to be able to stand up by the way that you show up, the way that people are remembering you, the impact that you're making, whether that's online or offline. So, for example, the presence that you have, think about the way that you carry yourself, your body language. If you're having conversations on Zoom, how are you coming across? What's your background looking like? How are you dressed? How are you sitting? Your posture is really important because it demonstrates your confidence, a certainty in yourself, but it also instills you with confidence. So you will come across more effectively and with that certainty in yourself in that way. So presence is a really huge one. Also eye contact. So looking at the camera when you're speaking to somebody. And this is a really difficult one, because if you imagine when we're in person, you're looking at the person that you're talking to, right? Because you want to see people's reactions. But actually, if you think about the other person, think about the way you want to make them feel, because that's what people will remember. Okay, is how you make them feel. So if they feel that you're looking at them when you're talking to them, it's a whole different experience to looking at the screen. So particularly in an interview situation, when you want to be showing up as your best self and making the best compelling impression, that's something really important to do as well. Mindset right now, and I had in fact it was a podcast that's just come out today on my series. I spoke to a gentleman who's in sales. He's a sales leader, and he was talking about he's been on both sides of the fence. And he said that he's seeing a lot of people showing up for interview. You can almost smell the desperation. It's like they're just applying for anything and everything. And you feel it, you get it. And my invitation to people is to not do that. And I don't know if Carla, if you agree, is that be really clear and focused on what you're doing and why you're doing it, and not throwing your CV out at each and every job, because people talk as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, if they've got 100 applications for one role and they can tell that you're just applying to get a job, then you're not demonstrating that commitment to the employer, to the kind of role that you're looking to do, to your career. It's just, I need a job. And it's a difficult one, to find balance. So it's really, from a mindset point of view, it's really focusing on, why am I doing this? Why am I here in this role? What can I bring to the table for this organization? And really honing it down and managing yourself. Again, your presence, your state, the way that you're showing up. So that, I'm not saying you would be desperate, but that almost sense of urgency, I need to get a job, is not coming through, because you really don't want that happening. It's like salespeople. If a salesperson is desperate, people will move away.
Yeah.
It's no, because I also, the thing is, an interview is a sales conversation, right? So it's the same thing. So if you're coming from that point of view where you're pushy or you're desperate or there's a sense of urgency behind it, it's going to put people off. So that's something you want to avoid. So that's a big part of the mindset of, you know, being clear in your own mind of why you're there, what you're doing, and showing up with that confidence. And a big thing that I noticed, and this is from years back when I used to interview people, is that an interview is a two-way process. So you're not subservient in the interview. You're there to learn as well. The person who's interviewing you, they want to find out if you're a good fit for the organization, for the role, the experience. But you also take that opportunity, and it's not to wait till the end either. It's to, throughout the course of the interview, make it a conversation and ask questions about the company, their development plan, the people, you know, what it's like, a typical day kind of thing in the role, whatever you want to know about the company. Do your research and show up. And there is nothing wrong with pulling out a notebook or an iPad or something with your questions on it, and show that you've prepared and show that you want to engage in a conversation. So those are probably the first things that come to mind.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, it's obviously difficult, you know, when you are in a position where you found yourself, you know, maybe you know, outside of a role or outside of employment, and you are looking for something. And with this obviously oversaturated job market, you do find yourself applying for things that you know you can do, or maybe things that, you know, you've got too much experience for. Carla, I mean, how do you balance that, you know, those two situations where you find yourself that you need, you know, from a lifestyle, you know, life point of view, you have to pay the mortgage ultimately, and you've got to find the next role. And there are not that many roles depending on, you know, the industry you work in. So, you know, how do you, you know, juggle that or balance what Leila's talked about? Have you got any advice on that?
Absolutely. So perhaps to cover a different topic from Leila that could contribute to the audience is that before you actually get to sit to someone, there is what I call sweat equity. So having discipline. Doing prospecting in my job, which is business development, means to analyzing the market, making very informed decisions of which companies are you reaching out, what are the segments that truly match your skills and capabilities. So if we kind of shifted to a job seeker, it's the same process. So you got to be very disciplined with how many companies or contacts are you approaching every single day. Make sure you are accountable for it. You track your progress from one day to another, because what we experience as headhunters is, as Leila was saying, the mindset thing. Once you are out there in the market for 6 months, 1 year, your motivation starts to get really low. You lose your self-esteem and everything clashes on you. So this is why you got to have a method. You got to be very disciplined, and there's a specific way to do it, to run your job search. And then you get the results after 3 months or 4 months grinding and doing what you are supposed to do. Because finding a job is an actual job.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing. And then as you ask me, Nyan, how do you balance those things? You need to pay a mortgage and you are not finding a job. In my opinion, when you need an income and you are truly hungry, you will find the income from anywhere. So I don't think we have excuses anymore. You go on the internet and you can put your services to the world. You can offer your services to the world. There are lots of platforms like Malt, Freelancer, but you got to think first what you are really good at. What are your skills, as Leila was saying, and then offer them to the world. You could be a freelance for whatever service you can offer. So there are always ways to find an income meanwhile, if you need it.
Yeah. And from your opinion, I mean, in your opinion, does that at any point detract from your employability? If someone is doing their due diligence and looking into you and and find out that you're also looking at doing some freelancing, or you've been looking at doing some consultancy, and maybe that step, you put that obviously on your profiles, and there's a career break of some description, do you think at this moment in time a career break is going to be scrutinized heavily? Or is it something that, employers are going to understand and be a little bit more sympathetic about?
In my opinion, I don't think it should be a break. It should be a way to find your means in the meantime. So you should be very disciplined and allocate a time to work as a freelance, for instance. It could be something else, and to find your next career step. And if you ask me, and from what I know from my clients, that is seen as something really positive. You are hungry, you will fight, and you will stand on your feet. So I think that's seen as someone that, finds his or her way, no matter what. And this is very positive.
Oh, interesting.
I can add to that as well. I think that's really important. I like the fact there's two things there for me. It's one is the discipline. And if I just talk about that for a second, because I've seen this and it's not good, is that I've spoken to people who are in the job market. They are looking around and they may be already, or rather still in a job, or they're not. And they tell me they're looking for a job. And my question is, well, what are you doing? Oh, well, people are contacting me on LinkedIn. I've updated my LinkedIn profile, and I've gone on the LinkedIn profile and it's so light in information. That's my polite version of it. But, there are, I've forgotten the numbers now, but there are millions and millions of people on LinkedIn. You want to be standing out, and your LinkedIn profile is not a CV. It is your sales page. It is your marketing yourself. You've got to write it in a way that's going to draw people in who want to continue to read and then scroll down and start looking and finding out more about you, to then want to have a conversation with you. So there are a lot of basic things you want to be including in there. And even from the banner at the top, someone said to me that day, oh, I don't want a banner. Well, you've shown no effort in your profile. And if how we do one thing is how we do everything. And if we're showing up in that way online, right now, there is so much competition and there is so much more like nous around what to do with LinkedIn and how to leverage it, that the people who are doing that are going to get better results. And, I've got mentees who I've given feedback on, this is what you need to do. And they're not doing it. Why? Because it takes a lot of time. Right? It comes back to the discipline. You've got to put in the work.
Yeah.
Job's not going to land in your lap like that anymore. You've got to put in the work. And, a few weeks ago, I was updating the about section on my profile. Now, I was updating it. I wasn't writing it from scratch. And it took me 4 hours. I didn't even realize 4 hours had passed by the time I'd actually finished it and, walked away. And that's something I write copy a lot. I write stuff around my bio and things. So I had a lot of information to hand, but it still takes time. So it's really important to invest that time and that discipline in setting yourself up from the start, from the get-go, because the first thing people are going to do is Google you and your LinkedIn profile will come up, and that's where they're going to go.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, and the other thing here is also is referrals. So I advocate very much that you reach out to your network and you are asking, who do you know who's recruiting right now? But the thing then is to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is in a really strong position. Because if let's say, Nyan, you come to me and you say, like, can you introduce me to Carla, because I'm looking for a job and I think, I'd love to work for the company she's hiring at. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I reach out to Carla and I say, oh, Nyan, really good at what he does. And maybe I've worked with you so I can recommend you, because I would not recommend someone that I don't know anything about. But then the first thing Carla's going to do is look at the profile. Now, if your profile is light, then Carla's response, I'm guessing, is going to be, well, she probably won't waste a lot of time on it. So it's a reflection of both of us. So you've now lost yourself a favor that you've asked me. It's a reflection on my reputation that I've referred to someone who's not taken the time to invest in themselves to really market and position themselves online. And it's a reflection on you who've come to me. So both of us lose.
Yeah.
I'm very much I love helping people and introducing people and networking around so people can move up. But at the same time, people have got to put the work in, and they think sometimes, well, I've got a great network, I'll just ask for help. But actually, you've got to think about what you're doing, the position you're putting the other person in. Because if you don't put in the work yourself with your profile, as an example, you're losing that favor that you're asking, and you're impacting the reputation of both yourself and the person who you're asking the favor from. So that's a really important thing. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just agreeing, definitely. And I think, networking is such a key point. I mean, obviously, it's not something that comes necessarily naturally to everybody. It will take effort. I mean, obviously, it's not something that, from my experience, I don't think it's something that you can just pick up and drop. I think it needs to be done regularly and consistently. Carla, I mean, from your perspective, I mean, how important is the network? How important is it to keep in touch with former, colleagues, former employers, and stay relevant within your industries?
Super important. And I think it's crucial to understand the size of the network you can handle, because most of us, we are super busy. So I think there should be a time every month where you segment your network and understand who are the kind of key stakeholders and who are the people that could contribute the most to you, and then make an action plan for each person. That action plan, in my opinion, relies on the simple fact of understanding how you could help them and how they could help you. So why someone should spend an hour of their time with you.
Yeah.
Why they should be interested in you. So that requires an active effort. It's not just going out and have a coffee and a chat. There should be a little bit more intention behind, not only for your own sake, also how you can contribute to that person.
Yeah. So let me just spin that one around just quickly, because obviously we're talking about maybe people who have been in a role, who have had employment, or, have an industry, have career experience. Obviously, this is the, Oxford Brookes alumni, and it's, a chapter for graduates. But what we are considering is also new graduates, someone who maybe doesn't have a network, doesn't have those contacts to reach out to. How do they, or what would you guys say about how do they reach out and build a network and cultivate something to help them get into maybe their first job? Is there anything that we can do as a new grad, as a recent graduate, to get on that, to take that step forward?
Yeah, so I'll take that first. I think I always say, I do this myself, and I always say to people, look at what's right in front of you. So even if you're just coming out of university, you have got people around you who have been in the job market for a while. It could be your parents, it could be parents of friends, people that you've met at university who may be mature students who've been working and come back to uni. Open your eyes, and this was the second point I was going to raise that Carla mentioned about thinking outside the box. You've got to think laterally now. The world has changed. It's no more just go and get a job for life. You know, people have portfolio careers, so they have what's called the side hustle or the other business. So the point Carla was making about going out and, you know, generating revenue a different way while you're still looking for the job. So many people are doing it now. So then think about each and your neighbors, you know, friends of friends. Just start with who you've got in your phone and who can I reach out to, and, you know, think about the companies you want to work for. So LinkedIn's great for that, because let's say I was at Hewlett Packard, right? So if you go onto into LinkedIn and look at Hewlett Packard and think, who am I connected with at the secondary level? There may just be people, and if you've done your placement year, you've been out into the working world already, you'll have made connections that way, and people will have then gone off somewhere else. So if you go utilize LinkedIn, I'm not trying to promote LinkedIn by the way, it is a really good tool.
A great tool, yeah, for sure.
But if you go on and like type in, you want to work in IT, so you type in Hewlett Packard and you see who's in there, who's connected to you, or secondary connection, and then look at, okay, who do they know? How are you connected? Again, it's putting in the work and thinking strategically of how can you find the people in the places that you want to be, and speaking to people around you. And even if they're not the people necessarily in the right places for you, who do they know? Because all of those people will have had jobs, careers at some point. So they will have contacts somewhere. And you've got to start with what's right in front. And the reason I say this is because I'm a huge advocate of any conversation can create a new opportunity. Okay, anything is possible. You never know where a conversation can take you.
Yeah.
So to Carla's point about having intention behind that conversation, absolutely yes. And it's not just about what you can get from it, it's what you can give, because the more you give, the more you will get back naturally. And it's important to really think, what is it I've got to bring to the table for someone? How can I maybe as a, I can't remember the generation, whatever, X, Y, Z, but, you know, the millennials, the people graduating now, they've got skills, you know, all the technical skills that people perhaps of my generation are struggling with, right? How can they help me to bring value to me and then ask me for help? Does that make sense? So it's a two-way thing again. And it's just to pick up your phone, go through your phone, think all of these people know somebody else. Ask them, who do you know who might be, you know, working in this industry, or who might be hiring, or who might know somebody, you know, just you got to keep doing it, and obviously track what you're doing, even on a spreadsheet, so that you know you're tracking your conversations and where you're getting the leads and the links from to other people. But it is absolutely possible. It is lateral thinking, it is thinking outside the box, and we've got the resources to do it. We've got the you know, the phones, we've got the Google and LinkedIn and everything. It's right there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for one thing I wanted to ask, and maybe, you know, challenge that, is obviously, you know, when you do reach out, you put yourself out there, you're asking someone, you know, to help you, or, you know, you're asking a question of someone in your network. It can be quite daunting sometimes. Obviously, there is a certain degree of vulnerability in it, maybe. I believe, obviously, in paying it forward, that, you know, if you've got some experience to impart, obviously impart it, and, you know, you can pay, you know, you can take, you know, take some, pay it forward ultimately. But sometimes it might not be reflected, and you go out to someone in your network and you don't get that, you know, get a response, don't get the, you know, get what you were hoping for. How do you take that? And, you know, do you think that there is a consensus within, you know, the world at the moment where people are, you know, thinking a little bit more openly about helping others? Or do you think it's a dog-eat-dog world? Carla, what do you reckon? Sorry.
It is a very exciting topic. I think people more than ever, that's my personal feeling, is willing to help if they see you are hungry and you really want it. Nobody likes to waste their time. So I think it's essential that they see that, you know, eagerness in you. So how fast you reply, if they tell you we're going to meet at Friday at 6 a.m., you show up, you don't put excuses. So people are willing to help in some if they can see, the spark in you.
Leila, what do you reckon?
I agree. I think this comes back to the mindset of how we show up and how we see the world. If we show up with that cynicism of, nobody wants to help, or people are just going to say no, then that's what you're going to get. And I think focusing on the fact that you give and you receive, so you help people as well, not necessarily the same people, but it's that whole reciprocity, the law of reciprocity, right? That's one aspect. So the mindset around it. And yes, you mentioned it's vulnerable, and that's a huge thing for people to get past. I get it, because I've been that person who very self-sufficient. I didn't need to ask for help. But I quickly realized when I was launching my business and coming out of the corporate space that I will need to ask for help here, because I'm starting from scratch. I need to learn. And to my pleasant surprise, everyone was happy to help. And I'm someone who was always happy to help. People inherently like to help because it's the feeling you get. When you said about paying it forward, Nyan, and about giving back. These are all things that are inherently within the human being, right? So we like to. So here's the thing: you will get the odd person who who says no.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, don't judge, because you don't know their situation. You don't know what's going on for them.
Agreed. Yeah, definitely.
And actually, that's okay. Who else do you know who can help me? Appreciate you're really busy. You don't have the time. Is there someone else that I could maybe speak to? And that's it. If they say no, move on. No biggie. It's like sales. You're going to get the no's.
Yeah.
Or you get the yeses. The difference is, in this case, when you're asking for help, you might find you're pleasantly surprised, because I certainly was. And here's the other thing I learned is that oftentimes the people that you almost expect will be willing to help versus the people who you least expect to help. You'll get people who you'd never have dreamt would reach out to you and hold out a hand to you. So let go of the judgment, let go of the expectation. And again, to Carla's point, you've got to do some of the groundwork yourself. Yeah. And I've seen situations where people are asking for help, but they're not doing anything. They're just expecting people to help them. No, you've got to put the work in. So it's a two-sided thing, but yes, it's vulnerability, but bearing in mind, for the last year, we've been sharing so much about being vulnerable, about being authentic, about showing up and sharing. And I think the world has shifted with the global pandemic. I think that has influenced the way that people are, and people are more open to being honest, being vulnerable, and almost, allowing their emotions to show. So it isn't a bad thing. And yes, you'll always get people who say no in any situation, and that's okay. Just move on to the next. It's fine.
Interesting. Thanks for that. I think it's really useful, guys. Just also want to put it out there to anyone. If you do have a question, please use the Q&A function in Zoom, and we will look to address anything that you might want to ask the panel. So maybe we'll just carry on talking. What do you guys say? Do you guys, is there anything that you want to obviously address, something that maybe we haven't covered as of yet, that maybe is important to establish at this moment? Or, should we try and set the world to right in other ways?
For me, I would just add, Nyan, to what Leila was saying, that following up is super important, as it happens in sales. If someone tells you no today, as Leila said, we should have a spreadsheet and follow up and have traceability. So I think that's crucial. For instance, to give you a measure, in the work we do, the average is for 5 follow-ups, you will get 1 sale. So it takes a lot of groundwork and trials until you get the yes. So nobody should get discouraged if you got the no 3 times.
Yeah. One thing, Carla, I wanted to maybe ask you is, and you might have some background info on this, is obviously we've got a very saturated job market at the moment, and HR departments, no matter the company, is going to be over saturated with applicants for any given role. One way they look to get ahead of that process and the hiring process is obviously running CVs and CVs through software and making some, compatibility matches based on software. How do people get around that? How do they make their CV stand out to, with regards to the software? And obviously, is the software accurate? Are there flaws? How do you overcome that barrier?
So the thing that I always say is that finding a job online, for instance, through LinkedIn or any other application, is one more thing to do, one more tool, but not the primary one you should be using. I think what Leila said about cherishing and building that network is what gives you the best career opportunities. So imagine this situation, an HR manager that receives every single day hundreds of applications, plus they are flooded with their regular job. So of course, they're not going to look into your resume. Chances are really low. So it's about cultivating those relationships and trying to get the decision makers before the HR team. And also I would advise to read a lot about what's going on in the market and in your industry, so you get to the opportunities before a vacancy has been published. When a vacancy has been published, usually it's too late. So I would advise to get there earlier. For instance, you've read about a merger and acquisition, an M&A operation that is going to happen. So you should be there. Or a company is going to run a new operation in a foreign country. Perhaps you could speak to them. So information is power. And I think we should work with that.
Interesting. Leila, any ideas, any tips, tricks?
Yeah, I think so. Something just popped in my mind actually is a former colleague and also a good friend of mine I was chatting to recently, and she had gone for an interview and it wasn't successful. And so she asked me the question. She said, I was interviewed by somebody who would be my peer, and then about 2 or 3 other people who would be more senior to her. And the question was, and she's not particularly active on LinkedIn. But she said, I've connected with the senior people. Do you think I should bother connecting with the person who would be my peer if I was to have gotten the role? And my question then would be, well, why wouldn't you? Because that, first of all, you reach out, and it's not just send a connection request either. It is send a nice message. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for your time. Great to talk to you, etc., etc. So you make it an informal but friendly kind of connection, okay? But ultimately, let's say the hiring managers may well go to that person and ask them, how did you find them when they interviewed, right? And even in her case, she says she hasn't been successful, but actually they may offer the job to somebody else and that person might turn it down, and they say, okay, now we've got, let's say, 3 remaining candidates, and go back to that person, the peer, and say, what did you think? Who's the next top person out of the 3? Now, again, it's how you make people feel and building a connection. So the fact that they've taken the time to connect with them and build a relationship can make all that difference, that opportunity.
Yeah. In spite of maybe not getting the role, it's still, it's ultimately making someone feel at ease and building a network, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you don't know, you could bump into that person depending on the industry you're in. I worked in an industry within tech that was very what's the word, I can't think of it now, not in it was a small part of the financial services part of the business, so everyone knew everyone, even though they're all just moving around different companies doing similar roles in that part of the business. So you don't know when you're going to meet that person again. So by connecting with them, whether they're a peer, they may become a manager before you do, and they might be hiring, and they're thinking, okay, we couldn't hire that person then, but now I'm in the position to make that decision. I want to really reach out to that person. You just, connections and relationships are so important.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, especially in my industry, it's such a small industry, and the amount of people I meet, having worked with them in, in one role, and then obviously going into another role, and then, maybe coming across them or applying for a role, and they've moved jobs, and all of a sudden, they're interviewing me, or, it's a very, very small, and you obviously, it might go without saying, but obviously you can't burn your bridges with anybody. And, when industries are so small, you can't have a grudge or, any bad blood. It's just too difficult to carry that kind of thing around with you.
It is. And, and I talk about, with my clients, I help them with their personal brand. And for me, personal brand is your professional reputation. It's what people say about you when you're not in the room. And it's the way you make people feel. Okay. So those are the core parts of personal branding. So your reputation is what people say about you. You want to maintain good relationships at all times. Even if, you're working with someone and things don't go to plan on a project or something, it's okay. But still maintain, like you say, don't burn the bridges, because you just never know when you'll meet that person again. And you don't know the capacity in which you'll meet them. But I think that's a really important point to consider.
Okay, so here's another one that I'm going to put to you guys. With a saturated job market, everyone obviously out for the same role. And if you've been on the market for, 6 months already, and, when do you start thinking about pivoting? Or when do you think about going back to school? When do you think about retraining or adding to your skill set? Is it something that you should constantly be doing? Is it something that you make a decision to do early on in the job application process or the job search process? Or, is it, and is there any pitfalls to doing that? Carla, what do you reckon?
Well, I think you shouldn't stop your training and your education, no matter the position you hold. It should be a continuous thing, an ongoing thing to begin with. And the ideal thing would be to hope from one position to the other, not leaving the kind of employment market. And then if you, let's say you are unemployed, definitely I would try to better myself, try to find what are the most in-demand skills in your field, and then get some training on it. But as a general rule of thumb, I would say on yearly basis, you should upgrade yourself, because the world moves so fast. So I think on yearly basis is the bare minimum.
That's a very good point. Yeah, definitely. I think I'm taking notes as we're speaking. Leila, anything to add?
I'd agree with Carla. I think she articulated it perfectly. We need to, if you want to go places, if you want to advance your career, you want to move up the ladder, you want to broaden your knowledge, you want to always be investing in yourselves, in your development, whatever that might be. LinkedIn again, I'm not promoting LinkedIn, but it does offer a lot of courses, and the short courses that you can do on there. Go, Google things, go find courses, whether it's soft skills. I mean, research shows that soft skills are more important now than the technical, because we can all go and learn a technical, but the emotional intelligence, all the soft skills, the communication, the presence that I mentioned earlier, all of those things are so much more important in succeeding. And that's something I learned really early on in my career, was that I was really shy and lacked confidence and self-esteem. So I thought, okay, I'll work really hard and that will create a successful career for me. And it was my financial controller at the time who said that, you are going to struggle. You've got the capabilities to succeed, but people don't know who you are. They don't know what you're about. So, which is why I do what I do now. The whole personal branding concept for me is about the visibility, the others' perceptions of you, and what people are saying about you is how you come across. It's particularly the confidence, and that was something I was going to mention around interviews and having the conversations with the recruiters, is you want to show up with that confidence and that certainty in both yourself and in your abilities. And that's huge, by the way, because so many people lack the confidence, and typically, not always, but typically men can appear confident more easily, it seems, than they are, whereas women tend to struggle.
So
you want to be working on that, and that's where, for example, presence comes in, because by working on your physiology, body language, the gestures, the eye contact, the smile, the small little things that can have people feeling comfortable around you, feeling confident in you, is going to move you forward a lot quicker than if you're lacking that the sense of certainty in yourself. If you've got you're feeling unsure of yourself, people pick that up really, really quickly. Just ask yourself this, when have you met somebody, at a party, at a social event, at work, and immediately you pick up on it? It's like a sixth sense, you'll know. And then if you're the person hiring, are you going to hire that person necessarily, or the person who shows up with that absolute certainty? There are important things to develop and to hone. So an ongoing development with that around the soft skills is critical to advancing your career.
Yeah. Carla, anything that, any surefire tips in terms of obviously interviewing and, how to be your best self? Obviously the soft skills that Leila mentioned, but anything that you found that works really well, or something that you look for in when you're in the interview process?
Yeah, I will use this chance because it happens a lot and it is not good. When you show up in an interview and your first question is, how many holidays I'm going to get? What is the timetable? What are your fringe benefits? I mean, that doesn't go well in an interview. But another thing I would say is to bring real examples that could evidence and show your capabilities and your achievements. So you should go on an interview having reflected on what have been those situations where you outperform, and you need to prepare that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Very interesting. We've covered a lot of ground here, and I think I was hoping to obviously open it up to some questions, but it seems that with everything we've discussed, we don't actually have many questions coming in. So I think it would probably be a good time to obviously thank you guys for joining us in this discussion. I'm not sure if there's anything you guys want to add, as a lasting, or ending note. But, over to you guys if you have anything that you want to say.
Leila, well, I would just say that this is a time of opportunities. You just need to know how to look at things, because perception is reality in the end. So nobody should feel hopeless or discouraged. I work in the recruitment field, and I assure there are lots of opportunities and much more will come. You just need to, dig in a little bit.
Indeed. Yeah, no, I echo that for sure. Well, thanks for that, Leila. Anything you'd like to say, or obviously you guys can obviously link in, introduce yourselves via LinkedIn, or and join the alumni. You can contact our panel, and obviously utilize what we've talked about to help moving forward.
Yeah, and I think just to share my sort of takeaway for people will be something I've learned in my career. So I'm not just throwing this out there, is that anything is possible. Again, your perception is your reality. We create our own experiences. What we put out there, we get back. So building on your self-awareness, honing a really strong mindset, putting in the work, the discipline, anything is possible.
Indeed. Yeah. And I think obviously as things start to open up, the job market is obviously going to start opening up. I hear, I feel positive that, things are going to change. They have to change, obviously. So for everyone who's attended, thank you very much. And, hopefully we've given you something to think about and given you some insight into the challenges or the landscape as it evolves. Please do keep an eye out for other webinars that the Oxford Brookes alumni will be hosting. We do have the Inspirational Journey series, which is going to be coming out in May and into June. You can find that on the Oxford Brookes alumni webpage. But I think it's a great time to round off and say thank you all for joining us, and hopefully we can catch you at another webinar moving forward. Once again, Carla, Leila, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your days to give us some insight and and help us navigate this new landscape. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.